blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but apparently neutral-toned chiffon and an Instagram-perfect wedding aesthetic are thicker than both. I spent $3,000 to fly home to celebrate my sister's luxury nuptials, only to discover she'd assigned me a literal plastic folding chair next to the men's restroom. To understand how I ended up sitting on cold metal while my family dined on filet mignon, you have to understand the Abbott family dynamic. I'm Chloe. I'm 26, a marine biologist living out of a duffel bag in Seattle, and I'm what my mother, Brenda, likes to call the challenging one. My sister Savannah is 29. She is a former pageant queen, a current lifestyle influencer with 250,000 followers, and the indisputable sun around which my mother's universe revolves. For my entire life, Savannah's existence was a curated exhibition, and I was the messy backstage area nobody was supposed to see. While Savannah was getting professional blowouts for middle school picture day, I was coming home with mud in my hair from looking for frogs in the creek. The divide only worsened as we grew up. Savannah secured a job in public relations in Charleston, South Carolina, effortlessly networking her way into the city's elite circles. Then, she met Liam Sterling. Liam was old Charleston money. His family owned half the commercial real estate downtown, and his mother, Beatrice, sat on the board of every prestigious charity south of the Mason-Dixon line. When Liam proposed to Savannah with an emerald-cut diamond the size of a postage stamp, my mother practically went into cardiac arrest from sheer joy. The Sterling-Abbott wedding became less of an event and more of a military operation commanded by General Brenda and her star soldier, Savannah. The first major blow came 8 months before the wedding. I was sitting in my cramped Seattle apartment, eating instant ramen, when Savannah FaceTimed me. She was holding up swatches of fabric that ranged from bland oatmeal to depressed beige. "So, Chloe," Savannah started, her voice dripping with that manufactured southern sweetness she only used when she was about to deliver bad news. "I've been finalizing the bridal party, and Liam has 6 groomsmen, so I'm having 6 bridesmaids." "Okay," I said, waiting for the catch. I assumed I was a bridesmaid. I was her only sister. "The thing is," she continued, her eyes darting away from the camera, "the theme is very ethereal, very delicate. And you know, the dresses are these custom silk slip gowns. They're completely backless, plunging necklines." She paused, letting the silence hang. "And, well, with your situation, it just wouldn't lay right on you." By situation, she meant 2 things. First, I am a size 12, whereas Savannah and her friends consider a size 4 to be pushing the limits of acceptable human mass. Second, I have a thick, jagged keloid scar running from my left shoulder down to my collarbone, a parting gift from a car accident when I was 16. Savannah was driving. She had been texting. "You're cutting me out of the bridal party because of the scar you gave me?" I asked, my voice terrifyingly calm. "Chloe, don't be dramatic," my mother yelled from somewhere off camera. "Savannah is under a lot of stress. It's her special day. You'll just be a guest of honor." "I just think you'd feel so uncomfortable, Chloe," Savannah cooed, ignoring our mother's outburst. "You hate wearing heels anyway. This way, you can just relax and enjoy the day. You don't have to worry about the photos." The photos. That was it. I didn't fit the aesthetic. I was the wrong shape, the wrong vibe, and my skin bore the physical evidence of her biggest mistake. I swallowed the lump in my throat, told her it was fine, and hung up. Over the next few months, the wedding took over their lives. I received the formal invitation in the mail, a heavy, letterpressed piece of art enclosed in vellum. The dress code was strictly stated: formal evening attire in champagne, taupe, or muted sage. I spent $400 I barely had on a beautiful, long-sleeved sage green gown. It was elegant, it covered my scar, and it fit me perfectly. I booked my flight, reserved a rental car, and mentally prepared myself to smile through a weekend of passive-aggressive remarks from my mother and her country club friends. I thought the worst of it was going to be the subtle exclusion. I had absolutely no idea what Savannah was actually planning. I landed in Charleston 2 days before the wedding. My mother had informed me that the Sterling family had graciously rented out a block of rooms at a luxury boutique hotel downtown, but unfortunately, they were all booked up with the extended family and the bridal party. "Where am I supposed to stay, Mum?" I had asked over the phone. "Oh, there's a lovely little motor lodge just off the interstate," she replied breezily. "It's only a 20-minute drive to the venue. Liam's father is paying for it." So I checked into a dingy motel where the air conditioner rattled like a dying lawnmower, while the rest of my family sipped complimentary champagne at a 5-star hotel. The rehearsal dinner was held the night before the wedding at the Carolina Yacht Club. I walked in, wearing a simple navy cocktail dress, feeling completely out of place among the sea of pastel linen suits and designer silk. Savannah barely acknowledged me. She was too busy playing the blushing, perfect bride for Liam's parents, Monroe and Beatrice Sterling. To my surprise, Beatrice Sterling broke away from the crowd and approached me. She was a formidable woman in her 60s, sharp-eyed and dripping in authentic pearls. "You must be Chloe," Beatrice said, holding out a manicured hand. "Liam has mentioned you. The marine biologist, right? He told me about your research on coral bleaching. Fascinating stuff." I was stunned. "Liam told you about that?" "He did," she smiled, though her eyes were calculating. "He also mentioned you weren't in the bridal party. I asked Savannah why, and she told me you had a terrible phobia of public speaking and begged to be left out." A cold spike of anger drove itself into my chest. "She told you I had a phobia?" Beatrice tilted her head, clearly reading my expression. I take it that wasn't the truth. Before I could correct the record, my mother materialized out of nowhere, physically wedging herself between me and Beatrice. "Beatrice, darling, have you seen the floral arrangements for tomorrow? Savannah was just looking for you." My mother shot me a warning glare that could have melted steel, effectively ending the conversation. I spent the rest of the night sitting in a corner, counting down the hours until I could fly back to Seattle. The wedding day Saturday arrived with a sweltering, humid heat. I got ready in my motel room, carefully doing my own hair and makeup, and slipped into the sage green gown. I drove my rental car to the Magnolia Estate, a sprawling, historic plantation house surrounded by ancient oak trees draped in Spanish moss. The ceremony took place in the gardens. It was objectively breathtaking. A string quartet played softly. Thousands of white roses lined the aisle, and Savannah looked like she had stepped off the cover of Vogue. I sat in the 4th row, behind the aunts and uncles, completely ignored. When they exchanged vows, Liam looked at her with genuine adoration, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread settling in my stomach. After the ceremony, the guests were ushered toward the estate's massive glass-enclosed conservatory for the cocktail hour and reception. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and made my way to the entrance of the reception hall, where 2 massive ornate mirrors displayed the seating chart in elegant gold calligraphy. I scanned the mirrors. Head table. Savannah, Liam, the bridal party. Table 1, Monroe, Beatrice, Brenda, Richard. Table 2. Table 5. Table 10. I read through all 15 tables. 200 guests. My name was nowhere on the glass. Panic started to bubble up. Did they forget me? Was I supposed to sit at the head table after all? I spotted the wedding planner, a frantic woman named Penelope, who had an earpiece practically glued to her skull. "Excuse me, Penelope," I asked gently. "I'm Chloe Abbott, the bride's sister. I don't see my name on the seating chart." Penelope froze. The colour instantly drained from her face. She looked at me, then down at her clipboard, her hands actually shaking. You're Chloe?" "Yes," I said, my heart sinking at her reaction. "Oh dear God," Penelope whispered, her eyes welling with sudden, unexplainable tears. "Miss Abbott, I need you to understand that I argued with Savannah about this. I told her it was unacceptable, but she threatened to withhold my final payment and ruin my business on social media if I didn't comply." "Comply with what?" I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Please follow me," Penelope said, her voice cracking. She didn't lead me into the beautiful, sunlit conservatory, where the tables were adorned with crystal and towering floral centerpieces. Instead, she led me down a narrow, dimly lit hallway, just outside the main doors. It was the service corridor. At the end of the hallway, right next to the swinging wooden doors that led into the men's and women's restrooms, sat a single, grey plastic folding chair. Next to it was a small, scratched wooden TV tray. I stared at it. "What is this?" Penelope looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. "Savannah said there wasn't an even number of guests to balance the tables inside. She said you wouldn't mind sitting out here because you prefer to be alone, and that you could just pop in to grab food from the buffet when nobody was looking." I stood there, paralyzed in my $400 dress. The smell of the nearby bathrooms, industrial bleach mixed with heavy floral air freshener, wafted into the hallway. "She also left this," Penelope said softly, handing me a small folded piece of thick cardstock. I opened it. It was a note in Savannah's handwriting. "Chloe, sorry it's tight in the main room. The photographer is doing wide-angle shots during dinner to submit to Southern Weddings magazine, and we needed the tables perfectly symmetrical. Didn't want you to feel awkward sitting with strangers anyway. Grab a drink and enjoy the AC. Love, Sav. I wasn't just excluded. I was hidden. I was a dirty little secret, stashed away by the toilets so I wouldn't ruin the symmetry of her magazine submission." At that exact moment, the main doors opened, and a loud group of Liam's fraternity brothers spilled out into the hallway, laughing uproariously as they headed for the men's room. They stopped dead in their tracks when they saw me standing there in a formal gown, staring at a folding chair and a TV tray. "Ah," one of the men, a tall guy with a strong jaw named Carter, said awkwardly. "Are you in line for the bathroom?" I looked at Carter, then at the plastic chair, and then at the open doors leading into the glittering, perfect reception, where my sister was currently having her veil adjusted by a stylist. The humiliation burned so hot it felt like I was catching fire. But then, the humiliation burned away entirely, leaving behind nothing but cold, absolute clarity. "No," I told Carter, my voice echoing slightly in the tiled hallway. "I'm not in line. I'm just finding my seat." Carter, the groomsman with the strong jaw, looked from my face to the scratched wooden TV tray, and then to the folded card in my hand. He was heavily buzzed on expensive bourbon, but the sheer absurdity of the situation seemed to instantly sober him up. "Wait, seriously?" Carter asked, his voice echoing slightly in the tiled hallway. He took a step closer, squinting at the note I held. "Is that from Savannah? She put you out here?" The other groomsmen, a trio of equally tailored men named Harrison, Davis, and Bennett, had stopped their march to the bathroom. They were all staring at me. "Yes," I said, my voice steady, though my hands were trembling so hard the thick cardstock shook. Apparently, I don't fit the symmetrical aesthetic for the magazine photos. Carter looked at the grey plastic chair. He looked at the heavy, swinging oak doors of the men's room right beside it. Then he looked at my scar, which was partially visible where the neckline of my sage green gown shifted. His expression morphed from drunken confusion to profound, unadulterated disgust. "That is the most messed up thing I've ever seen," Harrison muttered from the back of the group. "Are you going to sit there?" Carter asked, his brow furrowed. "Because if you are, I'm grabbing my chair from the head table and coming out here with you. I'm not eating filet mignon while the bride's sister eats off a TV tray next to a urinal." His kindness almost broke me. The tears that had been threatening to spill over my eyelashes stung with a fierce intensity. But as I looked at Carter, and then at the swinging doors leading into the reception, the sadness evaporated entirely. It was replaced by a roaring, white-hot inferno of defiance. I had spent my entire life shrinking to make room for Savannah's ego. I had spent 16 years hiding a scar that she had given me because it made her feel guilty. I had spent $3,000 to be here. I was done shrinking. "No, Carter," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "I'm not sitting out here. And you don't need to bring your chair. I'm taking mine inside." Before Penelope, the terrified wedding planner, could even gasp, I reached down. I grabbed the cold metal frame of the grey plastic folding chair in my right hand, and I grabbed the flimsy, scratched wooden TV tray in my left. "Miss Abbott, please," Penelope whimpered, stepping forward. "She's going to ruin me." "Penelope," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "You did your job. What happens next is entirely on her." Carter stepped forward and placed his hand flat against the heavy brass handles of the main reception doors. He gave me a look, a silent, respectful nod, and shoved the doors wide open. The contrast was blinding. I stepped out of the dingy, bleach-scented service corridor and into a room that looked like a fairy tale dipped in gold. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars dripped from the glass ceiling of the conservatory. 200 guests sat at impeccably arranged tables, topped with towering arrangements of white orchids and hydrangeas. Soft, classical string music played from a corner stage. The air smelled of expensive perfume, roasted garlic, and money. At the far end of the room was the head table, elevated on a slight riser. Savannah sat in the center, her custom silk slip gown draped perfectly over her slender frame. Liam sat beside her, smiling as the best man, a guy named Gregory, stood at the microphone, tapping his champagne glass to begin his speech. Clack. Squeak. The rubber feet of my plastic chair hit the polished marble floor. I didn't try to be quiet. I walked straight down the center aisle, directly between the symmetrical tables that Savannah had curated so carefully. Clack. Clack. Squeak. Heads began to turn. Aunt Cecilia, wearing a massive taupe fascinator, stopped mid-sip of her wine. My mother Brenda, seated at table 1, froze with a piece of artisan bread halfway to her mouth. Her eyes widened to the size of dinner plates as she took in the sight of me, her challenging daughter, marching through a $250,000 reception, carrying a cheap plastic folding chair and a TV tray. Gregory paused at the microphone, staring at me in confusion. The string quartet, sensing the sudden shift in the room's atmosphere, awkwardly trailed off. The silence that descended upon the conservatory was heavy, thick, and utterly deafening. I reached the open dance floor, directly in front of the elevated head table. Savannah's flawless smile had rigidified into a mask of pure terror. I unfolded the scratched wooden TV tray and set it down on the gleaming mahogany dance floor. Then I popped open the grey plastic folding chair with a loud, aggressive snap that echoed off the glass walls. I sat down, crossed my legs, and smoothed my sage-green skirt. "Hi, guys," I said loudly, my voice carrying perfectly in the dead, silent room. "Sorry I'm late to the reception. My seat was a little hard to find." Savannah's face drained of all colour. She leaned forward, her knuckles turning white as she gripped the edge of the head table. "Chloe," she hissed, her voice a desperate, venomous whisper. "What are you doing? Get up!" My mother scrambled out of her seat at table 1, her heels clicking frantically. "Chloe Evelyn Abbott, have you lost your mind? You are having an episode. Let's go outside, right now." She reached for my arm, her manicured claws ready to dig in. "Don't touch me, Mum," I said sharply, loudly enough for the first 5 tables to hear. "I'm just following the bride's instructions." Liam looked utterly bewildered. He leaned over to Savannah. "Sav, what is she talking about? Why does she have a folding chair?" She's just making a scene, Liam. She's drunk. She's having a panic attack," Savannah stammered, tears of genuine panic finally springing to her eyes. "Security, can someone please get her out of here?" "I'm not drunk," I announced to the room at large, "and I don't have a panic attack. What I have is a note." I held up the thick cardstock. "Chloe, don't," Savannah begged, the southern sweetness completely gone, replaced by a guttural panic. I cleared my throat and read loudly, projecting my voice so it reached the very back of the conservatory. "Chloe, sorry it's tight in the main room. The photographer is doing wide-angle shots during dinner to submit to Southern Weddings magazine, and we needed the tables perfectly symmetrical. Didn't want you to feel awkward sitting with strangers anyway. Grab a drink and enjoy the AC. Love, Sav." I lowered the card. "She left this for me, on this chair, by the men's restroom." A collective gasp rippled through the room. I saw Beatrice Sterling, Liam's formidable mother, slowly rise from her seat at table 1. Her face was entirely unreadable, which made her infinitely more terrifying. "Is this a joke?" Liam demanded, his voice dropping an octave. He turned to Savannah, his eyes searching hers. "Tell me this is a bad joke." "She's lying!" Savannah shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "She printed that herself. She's always been jealous of me, Liam. Look at her, she's just trying to ruin my perfect day." "Actually," a shaky voice echoed from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Penelope, the wedding planner, was standing in the doorway. Her clipboard was clutched to her chest like a shield. Her face was blotchy, but her jaw was set. "It's not a lie," Penelope said, her voice trembling but clear. Savannah instructed me to place the chair in the service corridor. I told her it was inappropriate. She threatened to destroy my business on Yelp and Instagram if I didn't comply. "I have the emails on my phone." The conservatory erupted into fierce, hushed whispers. The facade was shattering, and the shards were raining down right onto Savannah's custom silk slip gown. Liam stood up slowly. He looked down at his beautiful bride as if he were seeing a stranger. "You put your sister next to the toilets so she wouldn't ruin a magazine photo." "Liam, sweetheart, please," my mother, Brenda, interjected, trying to play defense. "Chloe has that awful scar, you know. And Savannah just wanted everything to look." "Brenda, if you finish that sentence, I will personally see to it that you are escorted off this property by the police." Beatrice Sterling's voice sliced through the room like a perfectly sharpened chef's knife. Beatrice walked onto the dance floor, her heels clicking with terrifying authority. She stopped right next to my plastic chair and looked up at Savannah. "Savannah," Beatrice said, her tone dangerously even. "Monroe and I wrote a check to the caterer for 201 guests. That included Chloe. We paid $350 per plate. If Chloe did not have a seat in this room, where did that money go? Savannah swallowed hard. She looked like a cornered animal. I reallocated it. To what? Liam demanded. Savannah burst into hysterical tears. The drone photographer. The premium package was an extra $2,000, and I needed it for the sunset shots. It's just one plate, Liam. It's just Chloe. She doesn't even care about fine dining. She eats ramen in Seattle. She shouldn't even be here. She's an eyesore. The silence that followed was apocalyptic. Savannah had finally said the quiet part out loud. In front of Charleston's most elite families, in front of the man she was supposed to marry, she had completely unmasked herself. My mother covered her mouth, finally realizing the severity of the situation. You can be eccentric in high society. You can even be a little mean, but you cannot be tacky. Embezzling wedding funds from your future in-laws to buy a drone package while forcing your scarred sister to sit by a urinal. That was a social death sentence. Liam looked at Savannah. The adoration I had seen in his eyes during the ceremony was entirely gone, replaced by a cold, hollow disgust. "You're right," Liam said quietly. "There is an eyesore in this room." He reached up to his lapel, unpinned the delicate white orchid boutonniere, and dropped it onto the table. "Liam, what are you doing?" Savannah cried, grabbing his arm. "We're married. We just took our vows." "We took vows," Liam corrected, pulling his arm out of her grasp. "But the ceremony ran late. We haven't signed the marriage certificate yet. We were supposed to do it after the speeches." He looked at his best man, Gregory, who was standing by the microphone looking horrified. "Greg, tell the valet to bring my car around." "Liam, no, please!" Savannah screamed, completely abandoning her polished demeanor. She lunged for him, knocking over a crystal champagne flute that shattered onto the floor. "You can't do this to me, not in front of everyone." "You did this to yourself," Liam said. He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just turned his back on her and walked down the steps of the riser. As he passed me, sitting in my plastic chair, he stopped. "I am so sorry, Chloe." Then Liam Sterling walked out of the reception hall. Pandemonium broke out. Savannah collapsed onto the floor, sobbing hysterically into her silk dress. My mother was shouting at Beatrice, who was calmly instructing the caterers to start boxing up the food for a local shelter. The string quartet, incredibly, started playing a very nervous rendition of Vivaldi's Spring, as guests began to awkwardly grab their purses and head for the exits. Carter, the groomsman who had held the door for me, walked over to my little island on the dance floor. He was holding 2 glasses of champagne. He handed one to me. "Well," Carter said, clinking his glass against mine. That was definitely not on the itinerary. I took a sip. The champagne was cold, crisp, and tasted like absolute victory. I stood up, leaving the plastic chair and the TV tray right in the middle of the dance floor. A monument to the truth. I didn't say goodbye to my mother, who was too busy trying to console her wailing golden child. I didn't say goodbye to the aunts or the uncles. I just turned around and walked out the front doors of the Magnolia estate, the humid southern air hitting my face as I made my way to my rental car. I flew back to Seattle the very next morning. Savannah and Liam never signed the marriage certificate. The entire wedding was annulled by high society gossip before the weekend ended. My mother still blames me, but I haven't answered her calls in 2 years. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. You just have to be willing to pick up a plastic folding chair and drag it directly into the light.